All right, welcome geometry students to your first flipped lesson. Today we are going to learn about special types of lines and angles. So we're going to start our conversation with parallel lines. So for parallel lines, we have a certain symbol. It looks like two ones, looks like an 11 put next to it. So that's our symbol for parallel lines. And parallel lines are coplanar and do not intersect. Okay, so that means they are never going to meet each other. If we wanted to say that two lines were parallel, for instance, if we want to say that line A is parallel to line B, and make sure that you are writing down exactly what I have here so that you guys have everything for your note check. Okay, so if you wanted to say line A is parallel to line B with our special symbol, then all you would have to write is A, our parallel symbol, B. So that means line A is parallel to line B. Okay, so again, make sure you're following along with me and writing everything down on your note sheet. So besides parallel lines, we also have perpendicular lines. Those also have a special symbol. It looks like an upside down T, just like that. And the special thing about the perpendicular lines, they intersect at 90-degree angles. So when they intersect, they form right angles. Okay, so 90-degree angles or right angles. So when you do have the intersection on the diagram, you'll see the little box, which is our symbol for the right angle. But when you're writing out that they're perpendicular, if you wanted to say A was perpendicular to B, you would just say A and then use our symbol to B, which means A is perpendicular to B. Okay, and then we'll just actually call these two lines A and B. And that's how you would notate that they're perpendicular. Okay, now a new type of line that maybe you haven't heard of before is a skew line. So skew lines are not coplanar, so that's important. Okay, so they are not coplanar. They are also not parallel, and they do not intersect. So the best way to show you what a skew line is to use a piece of paper, and I'm going to draw one of my lines on there. So if I have skew lines, I'm going to call this line L. This is my one line. You're going to have to think of my pencil as the other line, okay? And that's going to go through your plane like this. So this line L and this line P for pencil, these two are skew lines. So they're not coplanar because L is in my plane by my note card. Okay, we can't see the plane that the pencil is in. So they're in two different planes and they do not intersect each other. So I'm going to show you how to draw this on a 2D piece of paper. So for skew lines, when you're showing this, you can draw your plane, which is a parallelogram or like a rectangle, but their sides are slightly slanted. I'm going to zoom in since I know this is kind of bright. Okay, so your skew line, what you would show is that it hits your plane at a certain point, and then I'm going to call this, like I said, line P for pencil. And then to show that it goes underneath is where you would use a dashed line. So make that a little darker. So a dashed line, and then it continues. Okay, so that dashed line means that it's behind it. And then here we could make line L. Okay, so L and P are skew lines. All right, and then the next thing we're going to talk about are parallel planes. So we had parallel lines, now we have parallel planes. So just like how parallel lines are lines that do not intersect, parallel planes are going to be planes that do not intersect. And then we're also going to draw those. So if you have two parallel planes, we are going to draw again our plane like a slanted rectangle, and then we're going to put another one a little bit lower. Okay, so it's kind of like one is floating on top of the other one. We can even show like a line is going through both of them. Okay, so in this case, we would have A and B are parallel planes. Okay, so planes A and B are parallel. All right, so now we're going to do our first example together. So for our first example, we are using this picture to identify the following. So the first thing we have to do is pick a pair of parallel segments. There are many in this picture, so I'm just going to go over a couple for you. So one pair of parallel segments, you could do BF and EJ. Now notice in the diagram how these have these arrows here. Okay, that means that they are parallel to each other. So when we start to mark things on diagrams, we can use those when we know that they're parallel, or sometimes they will be marked in the picture for us, and then that tells us that they are parallel. So BF is parallel to EJ. Now, see how these have double lines? That means those two are parallel to each other. So you could do CD and BE. And it only says a pair, so this would be a pair, 1, 2. I'm just giving you more examples so that you know there are many examples in this picture. So maybe you can even think of some of your own. All right, and then for B, we're going to name a pair of skew segments. Okay, so remember, skew segments are not parallel, not coplanar, and do not intersect. So one example of those would be BF and CD. Okay, notice how they are going in two different directions, like BF is vertical, CD is horizontal. If I extended this out, it would never cross BF. Okay, so remember that exists in the 3D plane. So BF and CD. So I'm not going to use my parallel sign because they are not parallel. So those are skew. Or you could also think of it as GF. So maybe you would do GF here and BE. Okay, so those two are also skew. You can see that they are in different planes. Like GF is in the plane that makes up the bottom of the box and the side. BE makes up the top of the box, and then this side, this front side, which FG does not make up. So you are looking for two lines in two different planes. And it's nice when you have a shape like this because you can think of the planes as the side of the box. Okay, and there's no special symbol for skew, so we just are going to say and, or that is my and symbol. And then we have a pair of perpendicular segments. So for the pair of perpendicular segments, find where your right angle is. So I can see here that my right angle is given by that square. So when I say what's perpendicular, I'm going to use those two because that is the one that is marked. Okay, so a pair of perpendicular segments, I'm going to say BF and FJ. And I can say BF is perpendicular to FJ. So remember that you can't just assume that things are perpendicular or right angles. You have to see it with that symbol. There are other ways to prove that. We just haven't learned them yet. So you are going to have parallel lines at all of the corners. We just haven't learned how to prove that yet. So we're going to go by the picture. And then the last one is a pair of parallel planes. Again, there's multiple for the parallel planes. So I look for two sides of the box that are not going to touch each other. Now remember, when you're naming planes, planes are going to consist of 3 points that are what? Non-collinear. Okay? And so you're going to do your 3 non-collinear points when you're naming the planes. Okay, so when I'm naming my planes, I'm going to think of like the top of the box here and then the bottom of the box here. So I can use BCD, I can use CBE, any of those are fine. Okay, so I'm going to use for this one CBE for my top. Okay, so plane CBE. And then for the bottom, I'm going to use GFJ. Okay, now you could also do like the sides. So if I did this side here, I could do FBE. So plane FBE. And my back side here would be GCD. Okay, you could also do this side and this side as long as they're parallel. Okay, so parallel means they're never going to intersect even if you extended your picture. All right, now the next thing we're going to talk about today is very, very important to your next few sections. So this is a very special thing that happens when you have a transversal intersecting two coplanar lines. So a transversal is a line that intersects two coplanar lines at two different points. Okay, so in the picture, your transversal is labeled as T. Okay, so two lines intersecting at 2 points. Now, this transversal is going to create several different special pairs of angle relationships, and we're going to talk about those. So the first type of angle is a corresponding angle. And corresponding angles lie on the same side of the transversal. And on the same side of your lines R and S. Okay, so corresponding is basically the same spot on both of those lines. For example, if you look at the position of angle 2, okay, on line R, can you guys see how that's in the top right-hand corner? Look at S. What is also in the top right-hand corner? Angle 6. So an example of corresponding angles would be 2 and 6. We're actually going to name all of them in your picture. So 2 and 6. Another one, if you look at 1, 1 and 5 are in the same spot. So 1 and 5 are going to be corresponding. If you look at angle 3, that's in the same place on R as it is on S, so it's 3 and 7. And then angle 4 and angle 8, those are all corresponding angles. Okay, so corresponding angles. Now the next type of angle we are going to learn about is alternate interior angles. Okay, so alternate interior angles. Now, when you hear that, it's really telling you the position of where they are. Because if they're alternate, right, they're going to alternate sides. So alternate. And then the next word is interior, which means they're on the inside. And then obviously angles means that they're angles. So these are going to be non-adjacent angles. So non-adjacent means they're not next to each other. They are going to be on opposite sides of the transversal, and they are going to be between the lines. That's where the interior comes in. So for your alternate interior angles, you could have angle 4 and angle 5. So they're on opposite sides of the line. And we're going to write those down in our examples. So angle 4 and angle 5. And then there's one more pair. Okay, so the other pair that's in between the two lines, and when I say in between, we're looking right here. Okay, in between those two lines. The other pair would be 3 and 6. All right, and then the next type, we had alternate interior. Now we're going to have alternate exterior. So they are still going to alternate, but now they're outside of those two lines. Okay, and they lie on opposite sides. Okay, but now they are outside of those lines. All right, so let's go ahead and find what those are. So you could have angle 8 and angle 1. So they're on opposite sides of the transversal, but they are not inside those two lines. Okay, so angle 1 and angle 8 is one pair. Do you think you can find the other pair? So if you're looking on the outside, it would be angle 2 and angle 7. So angle 2 and angle 7 is the other pair. All right, and then the last one is same side interior. Okay, so if you have same side interior, think of what that means. So same side, they're going to be on the same side of the transversal. Interior means they are going to be inside those two lines. Another name for these, sometimes they're called consecutive interior angles because they are consecutive. Okay, sorry about that. We had a message from the office. Everything is all right. So same side interior, those are also called consecutive interior. Consecutive just means one right after the other, which is where they will occur. So again, these are on the same side of the transversal, and they have to be in between the lines because they're interior. So there are going to be two pairs of these. Okay, so for the same side interior, it's going to be 3 and 5. Okay, so your example is going to be 3 and 5. Angle 3 and angle 5. The other pair is going to be 4 and 6. Okay, so notice they're on the same side, 3 and 5. They're in between the lines. 4 and 6, same side, in between the lines. Okay, so those are your special pairs of angles. So now we are going to look at our last couple examples, and using this diagram, you are going to give an example of the following. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is give an example of corresponding angles, then alternate interior, alternate exterior, same side interior. Okay, so corresponding angles, I'm going to give you some of those. So for corresponding, angle 1 and angle 3 would be an acceptable answer. Angle 2 and angle 4 would be an acceptable answer. You could also have 5 and 7, or you could have 6 and 8. So corresponding, same position, okay, on your two separate lines there. The alternate interior, they have to be on opposite sides. They're non-adjacent. Okay, so alternate interior angles. This picture is similar to the one we had before, except instead of the lines being horizontal, they're more vertical. So that's why it's important to understand those rules. The alternate interior have to be inside these two lines. So 2 and 7 would be an example. Or you could have 3 and 6. The next one is your alternate exterior angles. So now they're going to be alternate but outside those two lines. So we have 1 and 8. Or you have 5 and 4. And then the last one is your same side interior. So your same side interior are going to have to be on the same side of the transversal but inside those lines. So it's 2 and 3, 6 and 7. So they have to be on the same line. Okay, so it's either angle 2 and angle 3 or angle 6 and angle 7. And we listed all of them. When it says give an example of, you would only have to write one of those. I just want you to see everything that's correct here. All right, now the last thing that we're going to do is, given this diagram, we have to identify the transversal and classify the angle pair 2 and 5. Okay, so when you're looking at your angles 2 and 5, you are going to want to mark those off in your diagram. We are actually going to add another one to this. So for part A is where we're going to classify the angle pair 2 and 5. And then for part B, we are going to classify the angle pair 3 and 6. Okay, that way you can see how this is going to change. All right, so the first thing I'm going to look at is 2 and 5. Okay, so I have angle 2 here, angle 5 here. To find the transversal, you just have to find the line that both of the angles are on. Okay, so your only choices are line L, line M, or line N. Okay, you can see on this line, I have 2 and 5, so your transversal is line N. If you look at the other two lines, both of them do not lie on L, only 2 does. If you look at M, only 5 is on line M, which is why this has to be your transversal. Now, when you classify the angle pair, okay, you have to decide, is it corresponding, alternate interior, and this is how we abbreviate, ALT, INT, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, okay, or are they same side interior angles? Okay, so those are your options. So the transversal, you have to tell me what line it is. Classifying the angle pair, those are your choices. Okay, so if we look at 2 and 5, if N is my transversal, they are on the same side, okay, and they are inside this line here, which means they are going to be same side interior angles. So angle 2 and 5 are same side interior. Okay, and then for B, you have 3 and 6. So here's angle 3. I'm going to mark this just with 3 lines because I have 1, 2, 3. And angle 6, and I will mark this with 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, to find the transversal, look at the line that both of these are on. Both of these lie on line M, right? N only has one angle, L only has one. So your transversal is, okay, line M. And then you have to tell me what type of angles they are. Okay, so they can't be alternate interior or exterior because they are not on opposite sides of this line. So they're either same side interior or corresponding. If they are same side interior, 6 would be inside this line, but it's outside, which means that they have to be corresponding. Okay, so they are both, if you look at the intersection here, they are both in this lower left-hand corner, which means angle 3 and angle 6 are corresponding angles. Okay, nice job. So you finished your notes. The next thing that you are going to do is work on your practice in groups, which I have already given you, and I will come around and visit your groups to help you with your homework, which is on page 148. This is section 3.1, and you're doing 1 through 25 and 35 through 40. So that may seem like a lot, but really some of your questions are just going to be saying what the corresponding angles are, and you're only going to have to name one pair. Okay, and then once you're done with the homework, I do have your homework key on Google Classroom as well, so you can check to make sure that you did it right. And then I'll be visiting your groups to ask questions as needed. So what I did is I 3-hole punched this for you, so you're not going to have to glue or cut to paste it in. Okay, the binder where you keep your bell work and your homework, you should have a note section in there. You're going to put this in your note section. All right. Thanks, bye.